Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into, well, a really hot topic lately, this incredible connection between our gut and our brain. We're not just talking digestion, we mean how what you eat and those trillions of tiny organisms inside you might actually shape how your brain works, specifically things like learning where things are and remembering spaces.
That's absolutely right. And for this deep dive, we've looked at a mini review that focuses, specifically on animal studies.
Okay.
So our mission really is to unpack the evidence they present that strongly links diet and the gut microbiota, that community of microbes, to spatial memory and learning. And we'll explore how this communication system might actually function.
Okay, let's do that. So
Yeah.
just to set the scene, the sheer scale of this gut microbiome is, well, it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
It really is trillions of bacteria.
Trillions. And the sources we looked at, they immediately bring up this idea of the gut-brain axis, this kind of established two-way street influencing, well, almost everything from physical health to mental state.
Exactly. And researchers are now using that understanding, to dig deeper into how the axis impacts specific cognitive functions.
Not just general mood, but specific thinking skills.
Precisely. Now, studying these links directly in humans is tricky. It's complex.
Yeah.
So a lot of the foundational work, like the studies in this review, comes from animal models, mostly rodents. These let scientists carefully control things like diet and then measure cognitive skills, often using tasks like mazes. It gives a clearer picture of potential cause and effect.
Right, controlling the variables.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So let's get to those findings then. What did the review say about diet first? Were there clear patterns?
Oh, definitely. What really stood out was how consistently negative the impact of certain diets was. We're talking high-fat diets, high sucrose diets, diets mimicking a sort of Western pattern.
The usual suspects, perhaps?
Kinda, yeah. And the findings were pretty stark. Some studies showed spatial memory getting worse incredibly quickly, sometimes after just one day on a high-fat diet.
One day. Wow.
Yeah. Others showed deficits appearing over, say, a few weeks with high sugar intake. And interestingly, the review notes that young animals might be especially vulnerable. And there were even hints that effects could differ between males and females. But critically, the review always linked these diet-driven cognitive issues back to changes they saw in the animal's gut microbes.
Okay, so the diet clearly changes the gut bugs, which makes sense. But did the review pinpoint specific microbes that seemed particularly important? Good guys or bad guys?
It did, yeah. It highlighted several key players. So on the positive side, bacteria like Akkermansia muciniphala, often linked to a healthy gut and metabolism, seem to actually improve spatial memory problems in some animal models.
You prove them.
Yeah.
Even in models of things like Alzheimer's.
Yes, including those, or models of high-fat diet effects. And similarly, common probiotics, like certain bifidobacterium and lactobacillus species, also showed promise. They seem to lessen learning or memory deficits caused by diet or conditions like type 2 diabetes.
So giving these specific bacteria could actually help.
In some of these animal models, it appeared so, yes. It seemed to rescue some of the cognitive problems. But then, conversely, the review also mentioned links between negative outcomes, like poorer spatial memory, and other bacteria, like Helicobacter pylori in some contexts, or an altered ratio of major groups like morphermicutes compared to bacteroidetes, which you often see with obesity.
Right, that ratio comes up a lot in metabolic health. Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating for me. We've got diet changing the bugs, specific bugs linked to good or bad outcomes.
Yeah.
But how? How are these microbes and diets actually, talking to the brain and affecting something like memory? What are the mechanisms?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The sources point to several pathways, and they likely work together. It's complex.
Okay.
One big factor is inflammation. High-fat diets, for example, seem to trigger inflammatory responses, not just locally in the gut, but potentially in the brain, too.
I know.
Well, possibly by activating the brain's own immune cells, called microglia. This can lead to ongoing brain inflammation that seems to directly mess with spatial memory circuits.
Okay, brain inflammation.
And then changes in the gut bacteria themselves, or damage to the gut lining, the whole leaky gut idea, can let bacterial components, like something called LPS, slip into the bloodstream.
Ah, so the leaky gut isn't just a digestive issue. It's a potential route for these signals to reach the brain.
Exactly. Which brings us straight to the next mechanism, gut barrier function. If that intestinal lining gets damaged, maybe by a poor diet, it becomes more permeable.
Leaky.
Right. And things like LPS, which should stay contained, can get out into the general circulation. And from there, they can travel pretty much anywhere, including the brain, contributing to that inflammation and cognitive issues.
So it's like a breach in the defenses.
In a way, yes. And interestingly, the review mentioned that some of those beneficial bacteria, like Akkermansia, actually seem to help strengthen that gut barrier, potentially closing off one route for inflammation to reach the brain.
Okay, inflammation, gut barrier. What else?
Well, beyond that, there's the crucial role of what the microbes actually produce, these microbial metabolites and signaling molecules.
Like chemical messages.
Exactly. Your gut bacteria are like tiny factories. They churn out loads of substances. Some really important ones for brain health seem to be short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs, especially one called butyrate.
SCFAs, right? I've heard of those.
Yeah. Poor diets and conditions like obesity tend to mean lower levels of SCFAs. But these SCFAs are thought to be really good for the brain, for memory, for learning.
So
They might provide energy directly to brain cells, or maybe influence how genes are expressed in the brain, ways that support healthy function.
they're acting like fuel, or maybe like tiny dimmer switches for brain activity genes.
That's a good way to think about it. And then these diet and gut changes can also directly affect key brain molecules,
Like what?
like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's a protein that's absolutely vital for neurons to survive, grow, and connect properly, super important for development, memory, learning.
Okay.
And the review suggests that bad diets can lower BDNF levels in the brain, whereas giving beneficial bacteria or maybe those SCFAs might help boost it.
So multiple angles, inflammation, leaky gut, microbial signals, even direct effects on brain growth factors.
Exactly. And the review also touched briefly on other things, like maybe the liver getting involved with high-fat diets, producing toxic fats that affect the brain, or how high sugar could lead to insulin resistance that impacts brain areas crucial for memory, like the hippocampus.
It's definitely not just one simple pathway then, it's a whole network.
Absolutely. It really highlights how tightly integrated our gut, our metabolism, and our nervous system are.
So after looking at all these animal studies in the review, what's the main takeaway? What's the big picture here?
Well, the primary conclusion from this body of animal research, as a review emphasizes, is that nutrition and the gut microbiota seem to play really significant, complex roles in shaping spatial learning and memory.
Okay, a significant role.
The evidence from these controlled models is pretty compelling. It suggests that changing the diet or tweaking the gut microbiome can actually impact these cognitive functions through all those biological mechanisms we talked about: inflammation, metabolites, BDNF, etc.
Right.
But, and this is important, the review is also clear that it's still a field that's moving fast. While the animal data provides this strong foundation, we really need more comprehensive studies in humans to fully grasp the direct implications for us.
Makes sense. Translated to people.
Exactly. And we also have to remember, cognitive function and especially cognitive decline, it's incredibly complex. There are many, many factors involved. This gut-brain link is one important piece, but it's part of a much bigger puzzle.
Understood. This research from animal models certainly paints a picture of a deeply connected system, though, between what's happening in our gut and potentially how our brain navigates the world. And as we wait for more human studies to clarify things, it does raise a question for you listening to think about. Could paying more attention to your gut health, maybe through the food choices you make every day, become, more recognized strategy down the line? A way to actively support aspects of your own thinking, like spatial memory, how you remember routes or find your keys. It's definitely food for thought.